Mabel felt the stain the moment their skin touched. It wasn't just a handshake. It was an invasion. A sharp pain shot through her palm the instant she reached for the guest's hand. Her smile faltered. The man standing before her looked ordinary enough. He was dressed neatly, smiling politely like every other guest who had come to celebrate her wedding day. Around them, music filled the reception hall. Guests laughed. Camera flashes lit up the room. Everything felt normal. Everything except the sudden pain crawling through Mabel's hand. Then she saw them. Thorns. Dark, twisted thorns wrapped around the guest's fingers. They looked sharp enough to tear flesh. For a split second, Mabel could have sworn they were growing right before her eyes. Her breath caught. The man continued smiling. "Congratulations," he said warmly. Mabel blinked. The thorns vanished. His hand looked completely normal again. She stared at him. Had she really seen that? Or was exhaustion finally catching up with her? The weeks leading up to the wedding had been chaotic. Endless planning, family visits, last-minute preparations. She had barely slept. Maybe stress was playing tricks on her. Maybe her mind was simply overwhelmed. So she forced a smile. "Thank you." The guest nodded and moved on. Mabel watched him disappear into the crowd. A strange uneasiness settled inside her chest. Something about that encounter felt wrong. But this was her wedding day, the happiest day of her life. She wasn't about to let a strange moment ruin it. So she ignored her spirit's warning. That night, she forgot all about the man. At least she thought she did, until the pain returned. It started as a dull ache in her right hand while she was removing her wedding jewelry. She rubbed her palm. The discomfort remained. "What's wrong?" Nelson asked. "My hand hurts." "From all the handshakes?" Mabel laughed. "Probably." The answer made sense. They had greeted hundreds of people throughout the day. She dismissed it and went to bed. The next morning, the pain was still there. Not severe, just strange. The ache seemed to sit deep inside her hand. Days passed. The pain remained. A week later, Mabel noticed something else. Her hand felt unusually heavy. Not swollen, not numb, just heavy, as if she had been carrying something for hours. By the end of the second week, the heaviness had spread beyond her hand. Sometimes it reached her forearm. Other days, it felt like tiny needles were moving beneath her skin. Nelson insisted she see a doctor. The doctor examined her carefully. Blood tests were ordered. Everything came back normal. Nothing unusual, the doctor said. Mabel frowned. "What do you mean nothing unusual? My hands hurt constantly." The doctor smiled politely. "Stress can produce physical symptoms." She left the hospital unconvinced, but she wanted to believe her. Stress was easier to accept than anything else. Unfortunately, the pain continued. She visited another hospital, then another. Different doctors, different tests, different opinions, always the same result. Nothing, no nerve damage, no fracture, no explanation. Yet every day, her condition worsened. She struggled to perform simple tasks. Holding a spoon became difficult. Brushing her hair became exhausting. The pain was no longer occasional. It was constant. At night, she often cried quietly after Nelson fell asleep. Not because of the pain alone, because of the fear. Nobody could explain what was happening. And uncertainty can sometimes be more frightening than bad news. The illness was beginning to affect their marriage, not through arguments, through helplessness. Their honeymoon had never really happened. Their first month as husband and wife had become a series of hospital visits and sleepless nights. One evening, Nelson found her sitting alone in the living room. Tears streamed down her face. He sat beside her immediately. "What happened?" Mabel shook her head. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Nelson pulled her close. We'll figure it out. What if we don't? He didn't answer immediately. For the first time, he looked scared too, and that frightened Mabel even more. A few days later, her mother came to visit. The moment she saw her daughter, concern filled her eyes. Mabel looked nothing like the woman who had danced joyfully at her wedding 2 months earlier. She had lost weight. Dark circles sat beneath her eyes. Even smiling seemed difficult. During lunch, Mabel struggled to lift a spoon. Her mother watched silently. Later that evening, she spoke. Mabel, have you considered praying about this? Mabel sighed. Mom, I pray. You know that's not what I mean. Mabel already knew where the conversation was heading. No. Her mother looked surprised. I haven't even said anything yet. You want me to visit a prophet? Maybe. No, Mom. Her answer was immediate, firm, final. Years earlier, Mabel had trusted a self-proclaimed prophet who claimed she was under spiritual attack. The man had demanded money, sowed fear, and left her emotionally wounded. She had promised herself never again. Her faith in God remained strong. Her trust in prophet did not. But not everyone is fake, her mom argued. Enough of them are. Mabel, no, Mom. The conversation ended there, at least on her side. But her mother wasn't convinced. By the beginning of the 3rd month, Mabel's condition had become alarming. She could barely use her right arm. The pain had become relentless. Doctors remained confused. Medications offered no relief. Nothing worked. One night, she woke up crying from the intensity of the pain. Nelson rushed her to the emergency room. After several hours, they returned home with more prescriptions and fewer answers. That was the moment her mother reached her limits. If Mabel refused to seek spiritual help, she would seek it herself. The following Saturday, without informing anyone, she visited a prayer ministry recommended by a close friend. The place was simple. The elderly prophet listened quietly as she explained everything. The illness, the worsening condition. When she finished, the old man lowered his head. For several moments, he said nothing. The room felt strangely still. Finally, he opened his eyes. Your daughter carried something home from her wedding. Mabel's mother frowned. What do you mean? A man touched her. The prophet's expression darkened. A man carrying deep hatred. Her mouth went dry. What did he do? The old man closed his eyes briefly. Then he spoke. He planted something. What kind of thing? The prophet looked directly at her. A seed of death. Her breath caught. Tears filled her eyes instantly. No! He intended her to suffer first. The elderly man paused, then delivered the words that made her blood run cold. The suffering is only the beginning. If nothing is done, he paused. Your daughter will not survive the next 3 months. Mabel's mother stared at him in horror, and for the first time since her daughter's wedding day, she felt truly afraid. The moment Mama Grace returned home and repeated the prophet's words, Mabel shook her head in disbelief. A man shook my hand and planted death in me? Mabel said. It sounded ridiculous, impossible, the kind of story she would normally dismiss without a second thought. But something stopped her, a memory, a small detail she had buried deep inside her mind. The wedding day, the strange guest, the sting, the thorns. Her face slowly lost color. Nelson noticed immediately. What is it? Mabel looked at him. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she whispered, Maybe I did see something. The room fell silent. Her mother leaned forward. What do you mean? Mabel swallowed hard. That was a man. Nelson frowned. What man? One of the guests. The memory returned with startling clarity. The day we were greeting people, when I shook his hand, I felt a sharp pain. And for a second, I thought I saw thorns around his hand. Her mother exchanged a glance with Nelson. The prophet said it started with a handshake. Nelson stared at her. Why didn't you tell me? Because it sounded crazy. I thought I imagined it. You should have told me. The room became quiet. Nobody could ignore the connection. That evening, an idea occurred to Nelson. The wedding video. Mabel looked up. The video? Nelson nodded. If there really was someone suspicious, maybe we can identify him. For the first time in weeks, hope appeared inside the room. The next morning, Nelson contacted their wedding videographer. Within hours, they received access to the raw footage. That evening, the three of them gathered around the television. The atmosphere felt strangely tense, as though they were searching for a criminal. The footage began. The ceremony, the vows, the photographs, the reception. Then came the greeting line. Mabel's heart started pounding. This is it. They watched carefully. Guest after guest approached. Some stayed only seconds. Others stopped to chat. The footage continued. Minutes passed. Then 20 minutes. Then 30. Nothing. Mabel began wondering if they would ever find him. Maybe the camera missed him. The video continued playing. A man stepped into the frame. Mabel's breath caught instantly. It was him. The same face. The same man she had never forgotten. Her pulse raced. That's him. The room became still. Pause it. Nelson's voice sounded different. The video froze. The guest stood smiling at the screen. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Nelson slowly stood from his chair. His face had gone pale. Mabel noticed immediately. What's wrong? Nelson didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the frozen image. Nelson? He swallowed, then whispered, I know him. A chill passed through the room. Mabel sat upright. You know him? Nelson nodded. His expression looked as though he had seen a ghost. His name is Kelvin. The name meant nothing to Mabel, but the reaction on Nelson's face meant everything. Who is Kelvin? The answer came slowly, painfully. He is Rita's brother. The room fell silent. Mama Grace frowned. Who is Rita? Nelson stared at the television. For a moment, it seemed as though he had forgotten they were there. Then he spoke. My ex. Mabel felt her stomach tighten. She knew Nelson had dated someone seriously before they met. Most adults had a past. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the look on his face. The look of someone remembering something he wished he could forget. Nelson sat down heavily. Nobody interrupted him. Finally, he spoke again. Rita and I were together for years. Mabel listened quietly. I loved her. His voice was distant. Everyone thought we would end up together. What happened? Mabel asked. Nelson looked away. I don't know. The answer surprised her. You don't know? He shook his head. One day she started pulling away. Then she ended the relationship. Just like that? I begged her to explain, but she wouldn't. Mabel had never heard this story before. Nelson rarely discussed past relationships. Then, a year later, he stopped. The room seemed to grow colder. A year later what? Nelson exhaled slowly. I heard she was dead. Mabel froze. What? She died during childbirth. Nobody spoke. The information landed heavily. Nelson continued. By then, the entire story had already spread. What story? Mama Grace asked. Nelson laughed bitterly. The story that I got her pregnant and abandoned her. Mabel stared at him. What? Nelson nodded. That's what people believed. The room became silent once again. Mabel felt as though the ground beneath her was shifting. Suddenly, pieces began fitting together. The dead ex-girlfriend, the mysterious wedding guest. Everything pointed towards one conclusion. Mama Grace was the first to say it. You think Kelvin blames you? Nelson's eyes remained fixed on the screen. He always did. Mabel's pulse quickened. The more she thought about it, the worse it sounded. A brother loses a sister. The entire community believes a man abandoned her during pregnancy. Years later, that same man gets married, and suddenly, the bride becomes mysteriously ill. The connection was impossible to ignore. Mabel slowly turned towards her husband. Questions filled her mind, questions she didn't want to ask. Nelson? He looked at her. For the first time since they met, uncertainty appeared between them. A small crack, tiny, dangerous. Did you get Rita pregnant and abandon her? The room became completely silent. Even Nelson looked stunned by the question. But Mabel couldn't help herself, because for the first time since this nightmare began, the villain was no longer a stranger. The villain might be sitting beside her. Nelson didn't answer immediately. Instead, he lowered his eyes and stared at the floor. And somehow, that frightened Mabel even more. Silence stretched painfully across the room. Mabel felt her heart pounding. Even her mother seemed afraid of what he might say next. Finally, Nelson looked up. No! His answer came quietly, but it wasn't enough. Not anymore. Too much had happened. Too many questions remained unanswered. The mysterious illness, the strange guest, the dead ex-girlfriend, the brother seeking revenge. Everything pointed towards him, and for the first time since their marriage began, Mabel wasn't sure what to believe. If you didn't get her pregnant, she asked carefully, then why does her brother think you did? Nelson rubbed his face. I don't know. That's not enough. His eyes met hers. I swear to you, Mabel, I never got Rita pregnant. The sincerity in his voice made it difficult to doubt him. Yet, the fact remained. Rita was dead. Kelvin blamed him, and Mabel was paying the price. That was one way to find answers. Find Kelvin. Within days, Nelson managed to track him down through mutual contacts. When Kelvin received a message requesting a meeting, he agreed almost immediately. That alone unsettled everyone. It was as though he had been expecting this day, or perhaps waiting for it. The meeting took place 3 days later, a quiet restaurant on the outskirts of town. Mabel sat beside Nelson. Mama Grace insisted on coming. None of them spoke much while waiting. Then Kelvin arrived. The moment Mabel saw him, a chill passed through her body. She immediately recognized the face. The smile was gone now. What remained was something darker. Bitterness, pain, anger. Kelvin approached the table slowly. His eyes never left Nelson. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then, he pulled out a chair and sat down. The tension was unbearable. Finally, Nelson broke the silence. Why did you come to my wedding? Kelvin laughed, a cold, humorless laugh. You already know why. Nelson stared at him. No, I want to hear you say it. The smile vanished from Kelvin's face. His expression hardened. You destroyed my sister. Mabel felt her stomach twist. There it was, the accusation, the very thing she had feared. Kelvin leaned forward. You ruined her life. That's not true. You got her pregnant. No. You abandoned her. No. You left her to carry the shame alone. No, I didn't. Each answer only seemed to make Kelvin angrier. His fist tightened. I buried my sister because of you. The words struck the table like hammer. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Kelvin looked at Mabel. His expression softened slightly, almost regretfully. You were never my target. A cold shiver ran through her. What? Kelvin looked away. I had nothing against you. Mabel's voice trembled. Then why did you do this to me? Pain flashed briefly across his face. Because deep down, he knew the answer sounded ugly. Because he needed to suffer. Kelvin pointed at Nelson. I wanted him to watch someone he loves disappear. Mabel felt tears gathering in her eyes. The room seemed smaller. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't pretending. He was admitting everything. Nelson's jaw tightened. What exactly did you do? Kelvin remained silent, then finally spoke. I made sure your marriage would begin the same way my sister's life ended. Mabel's mother gasped. The confession hung heavily in the air. Kelvin looked directly at Nelson. For years, I watched my mother cry herself to sleep. His voice shook. For years, I listened to people talk about how Rita died. His eyes filled with tears, and every story ended with your name. For the first time, Mabel saw something beyond the anger. A grieving brother. A man who had built his life around a wound that never healed. Kelvin continued. Do you know what it's like burying your only sister? Nobody answered. Do you know what it's like watching your mother collapse beside the coffin? Still nobody spoke. His voice cracked. I promised myself you would suffer. The restaurant fell silent. Even strangers nearby seemed to sense the weight of the conversation. Then Nelson did something unexpected. He stopped defending himself. Instead, he asked a question. When was the last time you heard the entire story? Kelvin frowned. What story? The truth. Anger flashed across Kelvin's face. I know the truth. No, Nelson replied quietly. You know the rumor. The words landed harder than anyone expected. Kelvin stared at him. Nelson continued. When Rita left me, she never told me why. I begged her to explain. She refused. I thought she had simply stopped loving me. He swallowed. So I let her go. Kelvin's expression began to change, slightly, almost imperceptibly. Nelson continued. Months later, I heard she was pregnant. So I went looking for her. Nelson's eyes drifted somewhere far away. I wanted answers. His voice softened. Not because I thought the baby was mine. That caught Kelvin's attention immediately. What do you mean? Nelson reached into his bag. Then he pulled out an old envelope. The paper had yellowed with age. Kelvin frowned. What is that? Nelson stared at it. A letter Rita sent me. Kelvin's expression changed. For the first time since arriving, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. Nelson slowly removed the folded pages. I kept it because I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. His hands trembled slightly. Then he passed the letter across the table. Kelvin hesitated. Slowly, he opened it and began reading. The further he read, the paler he became. His hands started shaking. Mabel watched his face carefully. Shock, confusion, disbelief, then heartbreak. Tears filled his eyes. No! His voice was barely audible. The letter explained everything. Rita had written it before her death. She confessed that she had been unfaithful. She confessed the child was not Nelson's. She confessed she had broken up with him because she couldn't bear the guilt of watching a good man build a future on lie. Most painfully of all, she admitted she never stopped loving him. The tears were now running freely down Kelvin's face. He stared at the pages, reading them again and again, as though hoping the words would change. They didn't. The truth remained. Everything he had believed for years had been wrong. The hatred that had fueled Kelvin's revenge suddenly had nowhere to stand. Its foundation was gone, destroyed by the truth. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then Kelvin covered his face and cried. Years of grief poured out of him. Years of anger, years of regret. Mabel found herself crying too. Not because she hated Kelvin, but because she finally understood him. He had spent years fighting a monster that never existed. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. His voice was broken. I am sorry. He looked at Nelson, then at Mabel. I am sorry. Nobody spoke, because some pain cannot be answered immediately. Kelvin wiped his eyes. Then he revealed something he had never intended to reveal. He explained everything: the ritual, the curse, the object used to carry it, the place where it had been hidden. And before leaving that day, he agreed to help undo everything he had done. For the first time in months, Mabel felt hope. The process of breaking the curse began the same week, and something remarkable happened. The pain started fading, slowly at first, then steadily. Each day brought improvement. The heaviness lifted, the burning sensation disappeared, the strength returned to her arm. 7 days later, Mabel woke up and realized something. The pain was gone, completely gone. For several moments, she simply sat there, moving her fingers, rotating her wrist, lifting her arm. Nothing, no pain, no heaviness, no needles beneath the skin, only relief. Tears filled her eyes. Nelsie found her crying moments later, but this time, they were tears of joy. Months of fear had finally come to an end. As for Kelvin, the truth changed him forever. Learning who his sister truly was did not make him love her less, but it forced him to confront the damage that blind anger had caused. He spent years chasing revenge, only to discover he had been punishing the wrong man, and in doing so, he nearly destroyed an innocent woman. Sometimes, the greatest danger is not hatred itself. It is hatred built upon a lie. And sometimes, the quiet voice inside us sees what logic cannot explain. Mabel ignored that voice on her wedding day. She dismissed what her spirit had seen. She never made that mistake again, because not every danger announces itself loudly. Sometimes it arrives smiling, with an outstretched hand, and thorns hidden beneath it. I hope you enjoyed today's story. There is more to enjoy right here on your screen. Click to watch the next story now. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.